Hi YouTube, welcome to my brand new channel. I'm a modern medievalist, which means that I live in a normal house. I live a relatively normal life. I even work in IT. Yeah, stop laughing, ass monkey. I work in IT. But I love to do medieval things. I love to cook medieval foods. I love to make medieval clothing and wear medieval clothing. You will probably see me in some of that on this channel at some point, but not right now because I don't want it right now. So, I am prepping for an SCA event that is coming up here in 2 weeks called Border Raids. And so for that event, one of the things that I'm going to need to do is, of course, have food because, well, food is kind of necessary for life. So, for the first video for this channel, I'm going to be making some food for border raids. In this case, this particular video is going to be beer bread. So stay tuned, we're gonna have fun. So for the beer bread, here's what we're gonna need. All-purpose flour, salt, baking powder, sugar, and of course, beer. I usually prefer a dark beer, but today I got a lager, mostly because it was cheaper and we're broke as fuck right now. So, you are going to use, for every loaf, and these are actually 1.5 pans, so I'm going to be making a 3-loaf recipe, essentially, to be split between these two. So, but for one single loaf, you will need 3 cups of all-purpose flour,
Now, preemptive viewer question, are these exact cups or?
Nah. None of my cooking is exact cooking because I don't care for that. It's too bothersome. Hey, you hear that music? That's my oven. It's now preheated to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. By the way, you'll have to excuse me and my ass monkey working the camera because we're idiots. Not literally, we're actually quite smart, but we act like idiots because it's fun.
My mom says I'm cool.
Okay, so now we are going to use 1 teaspoon of salt.
My mom does not think I'm cool.
And 1 tablespoon of baking powder. Now you'll notice I'm not using any yeast in this recipe. That's because beer has yeast. I know. So the beer itself will actually help the bread rise. And 1/4 cup of sugar. Now you could easily use self-rising flour instead of all-purpose, in which case all you really need is the self-rising flour, the sugar, and the beer. But I don't have self-rising flour, so we're doing it this way instead. Alright, I've got my dry ingredients for 1 loaf in there. I'm going to mix this up and then pour in a bottle of beer. Only, as I said, I'm going to be making a triple recipe, so we're going to cut the camera for a minute while I add in all the other shit that I need. I've added in my ingredients for my second and third measurements, since this is, again, a 3-batch recipe that I'm making. And I have incorporated all of my dry ingredients just with a quick stir with a nice cheap nylon spoon. And now we're going to add in beer. This is the fun part because it fizzles and bubbles and it's really, really awesome.
Fantastic.
So you want to use warm beer because cold beer doesn't help it bloom the way that it should. Cold beer does not bubble the way that it should. So, bubbly fizzy beer. I'm probably going to be doing the eyebrow wiggle a lot. I see that about myself now. Yeah.
These are things that are just facts.
Yeah. You do want to pour kind of slow, but don't worry about getting foam because you kind of want the foam. And if it starts to get a little bit big for your bowl, just stir it up a little bit. It'll be alright. Like I said, I don't tend to do fancy cooking. I can, but I much prefer normal, simple cooking. It's more fun.
And beer just makes everything better.
Beer makes so many things better, yes.
Except for alcoholism and diabetes and all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
But overall.
Overall, beer makes everything better.
Truly.
And one of the good things about this is that the alcohol does cook out, at least as much as it does in any dish. So it is safe for kids to eat. You're not going to get drunk off of this. I know, disappointing for adults, but you can make a beer glaze. So we're going to stir this up until it turns into a nice batter. You don't want any lumps, just want it to be nice and smooth, and that may take a few minutes. And then we are going to grease the bread pans and plop it on in there. So we have added in the beer to our wet ingredients, and as my lovely assistant Ass Monkey said, it now looks like 6-month-old baby. I'm not sure why she said that. I'm not sure how she's been treating 6-month-old babies, but...
Well, Mama raised a lady. Or in the words of Merle Haggard, Mama tried.
So, this is what it looks like when it's all mixed up. You notice there are no lumps, but it's also not exactly a dough the way normal bread is.
And why is that?
That is because this is a quick bread. This does not require kneading or rising times. So, that's one of the reasons I like this. Normal bread, if you're making white bread, it takes 3 or 4 hours per loaf usually because you have to mix the ingredients, let it rest, knead it, let it rest. All of this fun stuff. And it takes for friggin' ever. But this stuff, we've been here filming this video for maybe 20 minutes tops, and that's even with the cuts. And it's almost ready to go in the oven. So I have used some vegetable shortening on these pans. And we're going to just pour this in. We want it to be about halfway to 3/4 up the pan.
As a good-looking baby.
Yeah. Gonna be even better looking baby once it gets out of the oven.
Now, how long have you been making medieval food?
My entire life, actually.
Really?
My parents met doing these same reenactments, and because of that, I have been doing them since I couldn't even remember. I think my first event I was like 3 or 4 months old, maybe.
What?
And I've always loved cooking. I've always loved helping in the kitchen. One of my first things that I ever made myself was actually, strictly speaking, a medieval dish, because the first thing that I ever cooked without any help was split pea soup.
That's a medieval dish?
That is. That is a very traditional medieval soup. It is essentially what most people think of when you say peas porridge, is similar to a split pea soup. So, I've been doing this, and I made that split pea soup the first time I was 7, I believe. So yeah, I've been doing medieval cooking my entire life. I love to cook. I love medieval times. I love medieval foods. It works. And beer bread is especially tasty because it's savory and it's got the flavor of the beer. When you mix that with some warm butter slathered over top and the bread is nice and hot, oh, it's amazing.
Who needs a man?
So, now we can see I've got these somewhere between 1/2 and 3/4 full. They will rise in the oven, which, as I said earlier, we have preheating to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. It is already ready. So we are going to go plop these in. By the way, please excuse my kitchen. It is a mess. It is always a mess because I hate cleaning. And I live with a whole bunch of people.
Who has time for that when you have countries to pillage?
Right. So, those are now in the oven. We're going to set the timer. I'm going to check them at about 50 minutes in. And then, once those 50 minutes have passed, if they're still not done, I'll decide how much longer they need to go. It'll probably be no more than another 10 or 20 minutes after that. And then we'll let them cool, and it'll be done. So the beer bread, it actually took about 70 minutes to fully cook. But you can see they're a nice golden brown, and they've lifted up away from the edges of the pan a little bit, thankfully, due to the greasing. That's why we do that. So now that they are fully done, and I stuck a knife in the middle to make sure that they are fully done.
And now, how do you tell when they're done with the knife? Like, does something stick to it, or is it clean?
It's clean. If you stick the knife in and it's clean, then they're done. If there's stuff that's sticking to it, then they are not done.
Uh-oh.
So, I pulled the knife out. It was clean enough. If they're not completely done, they might be a little doughy in the middle, but usually that'll finish up cooking on the cooling rack because they don't cool immediately, of course. So, I don't have a hot pad, so we're folding up my lovely apron because I don't want to burn the shit out of my hands. And what you're going to do is just have a wire cooling rack, bring one over, very gently dump it out of the pan and flip it over. And we're going to do the same with the other one. And then once they've cooled down to where they're just slightly warm, if you want to eat them fresh, then you can cut it while it's still warm, let the butter melt on it. Delicious. Otherwise, you can cool them completely. They will keep for about as much as normal bread, usually about a week, maybe a little bit longer, but I don't really know how long it takes for these to mold because they never last that long. So enjoy your beer bread. All right, so here we have the fully cooked and mostly cooled beer bread. My ass monkey working the camera is very excited to try this. So
I feel like Beaker.
Slice it open. And again, beer bread is a medieval food. It's not meant to be particularly neat. Although I do wish I still had a bread cutter.
That looks very, very dense.
It is very dense. Looks like I might have done a little bit better to cook it a little bit longer, but it'll still taste good. Yeah, probably could have used another 15 minutes or so, but like I said, it'll still taste good. So we're going to butter that up.
You saw nothing.
I saw that.
It tastes so good.
We're going to butter it up, and we are going to let the ass monkey have the first piece and tell you exactly what she thinks of it.
All right.
By the way, in case you couldn't tell, none of this is scripted. That is an actual genuine reaction. I do believe I have made her very happy. Now let's see what I think of it. Crust is very thick, as beer bread is.
Ah, das ist gut.
Very tasty.